Okay, welcome to your demonstration for shading the glass. So we're going to shade this glass bottle. This little viewfinder, put back into your folder because you're going to need it for your self-portrait. Do not lose this little viewfinder. We are definitely going to need it. Okay. Then, to see the image a little bit better, to be able to analyze for value and not shape and proportion, we are going to remove the grid, and I would either just fold that tape over, I just folded it under onto itself, or you can remove that piece because you still have this piece left for your self-portrait. Put this grid back into your folder. It's going to fit on top of your self-portrait. Do not lose the grid. So put that back into your folder. So now we just have your image of the still life. You're definitely going to need the yellow piece of paper to go underneath your hand. I have my drawn final draft. I erased my grid, and I'm all ready to shade the glass. I'm going to put my newspaper padding underneath my final draft. We are probably just going to use the small and the medium. So you don't need your big, huge blender until later. And then you want your 2 shading pencils, 2B and 6B. We're also going to use mechanical pencil as well. And then I always just have this one off to the side just in case. So I do recommend that you sharpen your pencils before you start. We are going to start with the darkest values first. And so if you have a hard time following along, then we are following along the notes, and you want to see it. It's just easier to read for you. So this note sheet is in Google Classroom. I'm also going to put it in with Google Docs 16. And so it takes you through the steps of shading glass. And it has reminders, like you need newspaper padding, something under your arm, use a circular motion, overlap layers in multiple directions, avoid the light areas, add the darkest first, etc. So this does take you step by step through how to shade the glass. It also gives you step-by-step directions for the leaves, the flower, the shell, the apple, the piece of wood, and then options for, or the cloth, and options for background later on. So if you find those helpful, those are in the Google Classroom under Still Life, but they will also be in with Google Docs 16 because it's all of your shading. Okay, so today you're starting Google Docs 16, reading your feedback before you start shading. I'm going to use 6B, and I'm going to add in my just darkest parts. So let's get that down a little bit, have my image right next to me. So wherever I put the D's, then I'm going to add that in there. Circular motion. So I'm just looking for the darks. Okay, and then actually along that L, there was a slightly darker part that I didn't put on there. So I'm going to add it in because as you look at things, you see a little bit more. That's totally fine. Okay, looking for my darks first, then we'll go back and do that medium kind of shape. Okay, looking at the handle and the mouth. So the mouth, there's like a streak of dark and a little piece of dark on the top. Okay, then where the handle connects to the, let me move this up a little bit, where the handle connects to the bottle itself. And I'm kind of looking at how it's lighter in there. You can see like a dark curve on this side. A little bit of a line. A little bit of a dark curve over here. The little tiny pieces we're going to use mechanical. Okay, how this side of the bottle is darker. Okay, then looking at the handle itself, on the inside it's darker. So I'm just going to kind of trace it to get a clean edge. And then it fades up and becomes a little bit lighter. It looks like you have like that darker streak right next to it. Okay, looking down at the bottom, like in between the leaf and the flower at the very bottom. I mean, I think it's medium, but it's still fairly dark compared to what it's next to. So we're going to go a little bit darker in there, but not full dark. So for the M's and the D's, you don't necessarily have to, you don't have to erase. Okay, so now I'm going to put in those like nondescript shapes behind the piece of wood. So noticing right above the piece of wood, it's really, really dark. So I am going to kind of outline that part all the way down to the cloth, and then it kind of comes over onto the cloth too. Okay, so I can get a clean edge. Noticing that it's just really, really dark behind that piece of wood on the upper right-hand side, like almost like a shadow. Okay, then I'm looking at that kind of nondescript, shapy kind of area, and I'm avoiding the light parts. And I'm not going to go as heavy and dark. So circular motion, avoiding the light parts that are like in the inside. And if you see more areas to include, feel free, that you may not have drawn, but now that you look closely, you can kind of see it. And it's slightly darker above the cloth there. I'm gonna add that. And fading up into what I have. Okay, now I'm kind of staying away from those super highlighted areas. But I'm looking at how close that curved kind of nondescript shape is. Like how close does it come to the highlights on the side? I feel like it comes over a little bit more. So I'm going to kind of sketch that in there so I give myself like a subtle kind of boundary, circular motion, not pressing very hard. Okay, I think that's all for 6B. All right, we're gonna switch to 2B. Okay, so I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna start again like where the cloth is at the bottom of the jug, or bottle, I guess you could say. And I'm gonna look for other little shapes that I may not have drawn. So here in the very base of it, that does look like there's a line that kind of separates like a slightly darker area from a lighter. So I'm gonna add very gently 2B. And I am kind of outlining the petal and fading that outline in so I can get a clean edge, like as I'm shading. So I don't have to go back and clean it up that much. And then there's dark value between the petal and the piece of wood. Kind of comes in, and we'll refine that with mechanical because it's really, really dark. Okay, so the bottle behind the piece of wood here underneath is darker, so I am going to outline it and kind of fade down. And then we have that cast shadow in there. So I'm going to match the outline because I don't want it to look outlined. And I'm going to fade out. And then there's just like a slight kind of area here. All right, so piece by piece, I'm kind of looking really closely. Okay, so on the side where we did put the L, I'm going to erase the L. And actually, that's really light. I want to just leave it, but I want that shape to show, so I'm going to go around it and kind of fade out. Okay, so the side of the bottle on the left-hand side is darker than the side on the right, slightly. So I'm going to gently kind of outline, and I'm going to fade that outline in so that I can use that graphite to move around. And I'm going to kind of fade out what I have for that area. Okay, so above the piece of cloth I have an L. So anything above the cloth is going to get a little bit of value because we want the cloth to appear lighter, so we're avoiding it. And I'm going to go over my mediums because now that I'm adding my light values, my mediums don't look as dark. So feel free to add a little another little layer with your 2B pencil. Okay, so around, actually let's hop over here. So it's not white, it's not light, it's kind of medium. Okay, so I do have that highlight piece on the piece of cloth, so I'm going to keep that. I erased my L. I'm going to add a little bit of value because it looks like it's slightly darker next to it. And then I'm just going to kind of fade up and do like a really thin layer in the glass because our next step is going to be to go around the highlights. We're going to use old school wooding, so we don't want it to be really smudgy. So I kind of added a little bit of value around the highlights. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. It's hard to see. Okay. So it looks like a mess right now. So I'm just adding like value between the highlights a little bit with my 2B, knowing I'm going to go back in with my my old school wooden. Okay, so for the spout, or the neck of the bottle, I'm going to add just a little bit of value going around my highlights in between on the other side, and I'm going to come back with old school wooden pencil, and I'm going to come back with old school wooden pencil there, probably old school wooden pencil at the top. Okay, so now we don't want to lose our highlights, so I'm not going to darkly outline them, but I do with mechanical pencil want to erase the W's inside. I'm going to gently kind of outline. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, yeah, you can see it. I wouldn't go as dark as I did. I just wanted you to be able to see it. But if you do, that's okay. We're going to fade out. So with old school wooden pencil, make sure it's sharp. You sharpened it. You're going to fade out into what you have. Okay, so this is a W here. The white highlight. Matching the line, fading it out. So this old school wooden pencil is soft. It's a number 2, so that means it's light graphite, and it's HB, which means soft and hard in the pencil world. So you can, obviously we shaded with these for perspective, so you can shade with them. That you just can't really build up layers very well. Like it won't get really, really dark. It's going to get really shiny before it gets dark. So I would definitely use them for, like we're going to use it for the cloth because it's a lighter graphite than the 2B pencil. We will use it for the flower. Probably the shell actually. Ooh, we're going to have to be so careful around those highlights. There is going to be a part 2 to this video where we're actually blending and refining. So we're just trying to get the value on in this one. So kind of outlining my highlight. Actually, that one is longer. So double check your image if you've lost your highlight detail like I have. And we can always erase out, but like, it's just easier to, because it's hard to get them super bright white if you just erase them out. Okay, so I'm going around all my highlights there. I'm gonna do the longer pieces. The streaks in the neck. And again, I'm still just using old school wooden. Just kind of fade into what you have with the 2B. Okay, let's come back to the mouth. Let's do the handle. All right, so I notice how the handle is lighter on the outside compared to the background. So I'm not gonna really touch that part. I'm just gonna leave it, but it's slightly darker at the very top. And this line kind of fades up in the interior curve. And I am gonna go around those little highlights and then kind of fade out, but not all the way to the edge. So just a little bit of value. The blender's gonna do a lot of that work for us, and that handle's fairly light. Okay, so at the very top in the mouth, or the rim, I'm gonna use mechanical, because it's so tiny, I don't wanna lose that detail. Okay, so there are little highlights in there, little tiny ones. I'm just gonna do it as a streak for now. That's way too hard to try to go around and draw. And then we'll go back and put detail inside. Okay. There's some core shadows on the rim. Kind of curved and straight and curved. Okay. If you need to fix your drawing, you're more than welcome to. I feel like that needs to be a little more squarish. Okay, so now with mechanical, super lightly, kind of holding the mechanical in the middle, I'm gonna go around my highlights and fade out. Like I'm trying not to press very hard. Because mechanical pencil, this graphite is super smudgy. It gets everywhere. It's hard and soft, which is weird, you know, in order to make the little pieces. But mechanical pencil is not, it's great for hair and wood and, you know, tiny areas, but it is not good to shape with. Okay. We have all of our value laid down in the bottle. And the next video, part 2 of shading the glass, we're going to blend super carefully. Blend, refine, add another layer to the darks, refine again, and then we'll be done with the glass. All right, good luck.